Guys, help me out with this. The Democrats told us that when Trump leaves office, the authoritarianism will be gone, right? The fascist will be gone. Okay? That's what was promised to us when Trump left office and Biden took office. However, the only thing I'm seeing from the Democrats, specifically since that January 6th event, is more authoritarianism and fascism. Okay? Trump, who they claim is authoritarian and a fascist, I've never seen Trump openly call for censorship or to try to pressure companies to take down certain news channels that he doesn't agree with. I've never seen Trump do that. Okay? I've seen Trump be a strong free speech advocate. Obviously, there's things that he don't agree with, right? In terms of what people say about him. But I've never seen him ask for those people to be deplatformed. Okay? And the true test of free speech, right, in terms of whether or not you're for it or against it, is whether or not you will defend speech that you don't like. Will you allow speech that you don't like or don't agree with? If you will do that, then yes, you're for free speech. However, if you're not willing to do that, then you're not. It's very simple. Okay? And what I do know for certain is that in terms of what I'm seeing so far from the Biden administration and the Democrat-led legislature, is that I have seen more fascism since Biden took office and authoritarianism than I've seen in the last 4 years of Trump when it comes to our basic rights, such as freedom of speech. Okay? And this is where it's starting to cross the line, okay? Because a lot of people want to make the argument of, well, you know, private companies have the right to do whatever they want. And I agree with that, right? I think from a conservative standpoint, it's really hard to complain about censorship, but at the same time say private companies have the right to do what they want. However, it's no longer at the point where it's private companies just making their own decisions. That's not what's happening here. These companies are being pressured politically, not just from the people that shop there, right? Their customers, right? That's not just the same. That's not just those people. They're also being pressured by congressional Democrats and politicians, right? So essentially, they're being pressured by the government. We're having government interference in regards to these companies' decisions on who they allow on their platforms and what news channels they host and what viewpoints are allowed on their platforms. The Democrats, right, are continuing this crusade against freedom of speech and interrupting the private markets by questioning TV carriers on their decisions to host Fox, OANN, and Newsmax, basically saying that these channels are channels for misinformation. Okay, so let's read a little bit more here. Two Democrats pressed a mix of cable, satellite, and streaming providers on Monday about their decisions to carry Fox News, One American News Network, and Newsmax, accusing the right-leaning outlets of serving as, quote, misinformation, rumor mills, and conspiracy theory hotbeds that produce content that leads to real harm. Crossing the line, the letters from the members of the Energy and Commerce Committee reflect continued anger in Congress about the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol by supporters of then President Donald Trump, as well as Democrats concerned about misinformation fueling the riot spread on conservative news outlets in addition to social media. All right, so, you know, I find it funny how the Democrats always try to defend their authoritarianism by trying to say, well, we're fighting for the greater good. We're fighting for facts. We're fighting for things that we define as the right information to be allowed. Okay. And we're trying to get rid of wrong information. And the problem is that this standard that they're trying to apply is completely political and subjective, right? For example, we've seen it. CNN with the BLM riots and protests, them calling that fiery but peaceful protest, them telling people in the middle of a pandemic that it's okay for those people to be out there, right, in the middle of a pandemic, right, while also demonizing anybody on the right that has their own social gathering, shows that it's not about facts. It's about opinions. It's all subjective. If that's the case, why are they not citing CNN, MSNBC, and all the other news channels, right, that push the whole, protesting in the street is okay during a pandemic? Okay, because, to me, again, if you're going to go that route, which I don't agree with, but if you're going to go that route, at least be consistent about it. Because I can tell you right now, more than likely, some people probably or may have caught COVID from going to these protests, from being exposed to all these other people doing these BLM riots. But for some reason, the media was allowed to become doctors and to say that, well, police brutality is a public health emergency. So, and that takes more precedent over a once in a lifetime pandemic, right? That's what CNN and the media said. But you're trying to tell me that's not misinformation, right? When it's 100% political, this is information that's potentially harmful. And see, this is where I think the standard is BS from the Democrats. They don't care about what's harmful and what's not harmful. They purely care about whether or not they agree with it, right? Does it fit their political narrative? Okay, that's what they really care about. Now, if I'm on the far left, or if I'm left of the establishment Democrats, I'll be worried about this. And the reason why is because they're coming out the conservatives now, but those people on the left who have faced censorship, right? Those, on the more left of the establishment Democrats, particularly, alternative media channels, have faced censorship themselves. Okay? And those people that are to the left of the establishment are very critical of the establishment. And when you have the left establishment trying to censor the right, the left should be concerned about that, because that means that eventually they're going to come for them. Okay? The pendulum always swings the other way in politics. Okay? And that's something that I always remember when I'm covering these stories, when I'm talking about policy, when I'm talking about anything in politics. How could this be potentially turned around on us in the future, right? How could this potentially affect me? It might not be affecting me now. We might be winning now. But what precedent does this set? The Democrats are setting a precedent that if they don't agree with your speech, right, or if you criticize them, or if it's not in line with what they feel the worldview should be, then they can just go to these big companies and say, hey, cut Fox News, cut OANN, cut Newsmax, cut the Young Turks, cut the Jimmy Dore Show, cut Hassan Urabi, right? I'm just naming random left-wingers, right? People that I think should be standing up, right, and at the forefront of this fight against censorship, because they're going to be affected just like the conservatives are. And this stuff is scary stuff that Democrats are doing. So let's read a little bit more here. Representatives Anna Eshoo and Jerry McNerney, both from California, sent letters to AT&T, Verizon, Roku, Amazon, Apple, Comcast, Charter, Dish, Cox, Atis, and Hulu, as well as Google's parent Alphabet, saying, quote, what moral or ethical principles, including those related to journalistic integrity, violence and medical information, and public health, do you apply in dealing with channels to carry or when to take adverse actions against a channel? The Democrat asked. They also asked the carriers if they, quote, planning to continue carrying Fox News, Newsmax, and OANN. Again, I mean, Democrats trying to take the moral high ground here, trying to say, listen, if you don't do what we want, then you're a bad company, right? Ethically, morally, you should feel bad morally about yourself if you carry Fox News, OANN, Newsmax, right? If you carry channels that have different opinions than us, you're a bad person. That's essentially what they're saying here. What the Democrats said, the lawmakers pointed to concerns around the channel's handling of the November presidential election and Trump's false claims of victory leading up to the January riot, as well as the pandemic. Quote, right-wing media outlets like Newsmax, One American News Network, and Fox News all aired misinformation about the November 2020 elections, Issue and McNerney wrote. The networks also have been the key vectors of spreading misinformation related to the pandemic. Again, guys, I've already addressed this in regards to the pandemic, right? You cannot sit here and tell me that MSNBC and CNN have not carried misinformation about the pandemic, acting like that the BLM protests and police brutality took precedence over this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. Again, these are not my words. These are words of the scientists and medical professionals that the Democrats worship. So I'm not even I'm using their own argument against them. That's not even my opinion. I'm just saying this is what they say. So my question is, what do you define as misinformation related to the pandemic? Because that can be broad, right? That can be ultra broad, right? Because I would define all the coverage that MSNBC and CNN did during the wake of the George Floyd protest as misinformation in regards to the pandemic, right? I mean, it's even worse than anything that I've seen from Fox News. Fox News and Newsmax quickly expressed alarm about the Democrats' efforts. I would be too. Quote, for individual members of Congress to highlight political speech they do not like and to demand cable distributors engage in viewpoint discrimination sets a terrible precedent. Fox said the network, which in November called Arizona election results in favor of President Joe Biden ahead of other outlets and faced backlash from Trump supporters for the decision, noted that it was the most watched cable news channel of 2020 and said it is clearly distinguishes news from opinions. Quote, the House Democrats' attack on free speech and basic First Amendment rights should send chills down the spines of all Americans, Newsmax said. Newsmax reported fairly and accurately on allegations and claims made by both sides during the recent election contest. We did not see the same balanced coverage when CNN and MSNBC pushed for years the Russian collusion hoax, airing numerous claims and interviews with Democrat leaders that turned out to be patently false. Great response from Newsmax. You know, and that's the thing. Why is it such a bad thing to cover both sides? Okay, right? Like, you can cover both sides, right? Like, whatever claims are made without necessarily endorsing a claim, right? Democrats are upset because Fox News aired the claims about the election, right? However, it's not like everybody on the network endorsed those claims. Everybody on the network didn't go along with that. Right? Just because you air it and you talk about it and you say, hey, guys, this is what's being said, this is what's happening, it's up to you to believe what you want to believe. That, in my opinion, is the core of journalistic integrity. Right? What's not journalistic integrity is just covering one side of something and then acting like that there's not a whole group of people in this country that potentially could believe something else. If anything, you cover both sides and you let the people decide, okay, what they want to believe. Because, you know, if the facts and evidence are in your favor, then for the most part, most people are going to go along with the facts and the evidence. So the fact that, again, CNN didn't have any balanced coverage in regards to the Russian collusion thing when they took it as just fact that it happened despite it being patently false, again, shows where is the standard from the Democrats and why is this not being applied to CNN and MSNBC? Why are you only asking about Fox News, OANN, Newsmax? Because it's about politics. It's about viewpoints that they think is going to harm the Democrat machine. Okay? It's not about protecting people. It's not about keeping people safe. OANN didn't immediately respond to requests for comments. What's next? The House Energy and Commerce Telecom Committee will hold a hearing on Wednesday devoted to what it calls misinformation and disinformation, hosted on cable and broadcast networks with an eye towards both the Capitol attack and the pandemic. No one from the networks is listed among witnesses. Quote, free speech scholars argue that for a democracy to function, informed debates and the marketplace of ideas must be able to work off a shared set of facts. Democratic staff wrote in a memo released on Monday, arguing that cable operators and broadcasters have played a role in the spread of disinformation. Lawmakers have in recent years largely targeted social media companies rather than traditional media companies over the spread of bogus information. All right. In terms of that quote, in terms of agreeing on a shared set of facts. Well, that's something that is not happening on both sides of the aisle, right? Okay. CNN couldn't agree on the fact that the Russian collusion was a hoax. They didn't apologize for it. They didn't go back on it. They also apparently didn't agree with the Hunter Biden investigation, and that was something that was actually happening, was a legitimate story until after the election, right? They said it was Russian disinformation, okay, based off nothing, based off no facts, and then turned around and made it front page news after the election was over, okay? CNN didn't agree on the facts in regards to the pandemic being a big deal and the potential spread of the virus during the BLM protests. Apparently, they didn't want to agree on that fact. Okay? So to me, I don't want to hear nothing from the Democrats about this. Okay? Because at the end of the day, they don't question CNN. They don't question MSNBC. They only question conservative outlets they don't agree with. Okay? And that's my issue here. And the thing is, I hope that the Republicans in these committees call them out on this. Right? And I also hope that these Republicans are working overtime to counter this attack on free speech. Right? And I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm disappointed by the efforts that Republicans have put in so far. I really am. Right? It almost seems like to me that the establishment Republicans, particularly the Mitch McConnells of the world, want to go along with this censorship because they think it fits their best interest. And that they're not fighting hard enough for this. They're letting the Democrats run all over them. Right? They should be sending counter letters to these companies saying, no, there will be consequences if you go along with this. If you start trying to censor conservative news outlets, no, there will be consequences. You will have to answer for that. Right? Republicans need to grow some cojones, man. For real. Because again, ultimately, long term, this is going to hurt the Republican Party. This is going to hurt conservatives. Right? I'm all about agreeing on a shared set of facts. I think that is an issue, right? I think that is a requirement for a functioning democracy. However, at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, it's not right for you to shun a whole group of people and to silence them and their opinions just because you don't like their opinions, because you don't feel like their opinions are factual. When at the end of the day, a lot of times when it comes to what is a fact and what's not a fact, what's true and what's not true, it's not even decided at that time. It's something that's decided years down the road. Okay? Sometimes the conspiracies, again, I'm not a conspiracy guy, guys. You guys know I'm not a conspiracy guy. I do the sniff test. If it don't pass the sniff test, I'm done with it. But the reason why I give it a sniff test in the first place is because sometimes those conspiracies turn out to be true. Right? With time, it turns out to be true. Okay? So automatically dismissing them in and of itself, you could be dismissing factual information, which means that, again, if you're dismissing factual information, how can we agree on a shared set of facts? That in and of itself is an attack on free speech. So look, man, only thing I'm saying is this. Republicans, they need to do something about this, right? They can't just keep letting the Democrats roll over them with this. I need to see some action from Republicans on this. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.